It's a new month, and that means that it is time once again for the new product roundup and giveaway. Once a month, we take a look at new products that have come out in the last month. We give our quick thoughts off the cuff about them, and we do a giveaway. At the end of this video, we're going to give away one of these items, so stick around. And I keep saying we because, as usual, I am joined by my co-host, ItsBlunty. Hi, Blunty.
Hey, Joshua. How's it going today?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be back for January. Yeah, always like doing this stuff with you.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Just in case you find yourself getting bored or antsy at any point in watching this video, there's a link down in the video description. There's a table of contents with all the products, as well as links to the products if you decide to check them out on a store site. And there's a table of contents, which YouTube has added this feature where you could go down to the timeline and you can see all the chapters breaks for the video, which, Blunty, I always feel anxious about mentioning a YouTube feature because like 5 years from now, they'll remove the feature and then the video will sound, but for now, that should still exist. So what do we got, Blunty? Let's start it off. Let's kick it right off.
Well, first off, I think we should talk about the FPV Flight Dynamics book by Christian Mollica, something like that. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, but yeah, it's a really cool book, man. This is a book he's just released. I think he sent us both a copy of it. And,
yeah, that's true. I've got mine right here. Mm-hmm.
It is really, I mean, it's just really a piece of work. You can tell a lot of work and passion went into this project, and it's just got a lot of really cool features to it. I think there's like 220 full color art pieces in the book. They all show or describe some part of flight or some part of FPV in some way for us. And, you know, there's trick descriptions and tutorials of things and basically just an understanding of the hobby that I think a lot of people won't have if they're not, you know, intimately in the hobby.
Yeah, this book would be great for somebody who is just getting into the hobby and kind of wants a primer, not just into like the parts of a quadcopter and kind of how they go together, but into flight dynamics, into like what you're doing with the sticks while you're doing a certain trick. And there's no substitute for actual stick time in the simulator or in real life, but also like you can read about something and grasp the concepts before you actually try to do it for real. Yeah. Oh, look, they finally got the preview up on Amazon, so you can actually kind of look at the inside of it and check it out. So it's like $50, which is, I mean, that's a fair amount of money. I would call this a textbook. So for a textbook, yeah, that's a reasonable amount of money. Not everybody's going to want to buy it. He is also working on putting out an ebook edition if you want just the information. But I kind of love just having this hard copy to put like on my, I don't actually have a coffee table, but if I had a coffee table, that's where I would put it.
Yeah, on your proverbial coffee table. Yeah, right. I agree.
All right. So thank you, Christian Mollica, for doing this. This is really just an enormous amount of work, and I'm super excited to be able to bring it to people's attention. Let's talk about new flight controllers and ESCs that have come out in this last month. And I think the one that I am most excited about is this one, the BrainFPV Radix V2.
Yeah, this seems like a really cool new product. The H7s, I think more H7s is going to be better. We'll get more adoption for those as there's more of them publicly available for people. And this board seems like it's kind of got, you know, a lot of the basic features. It's got, looks like a new style barometer on it, a fairly new gyro on it. You know, they're doing quite a bit of different things with this. And of course, they have the Radix better OSD, you know, the full graphical OSD display, which I do believe means it's like its own Betaflight target, correct?
That's correct. BrainFPV develops their own Betaflight targets. You cannot flash it. You can't select it from within the configurator. You have to go to BrainFPV's website and download the hex file for it. And part of the reason they do that is because they have a special graphical OSD that has more functionality than the default Betaflight OSD. That's true for this one. Interestingly, Betaflight boards are working on getting their own graphical OSD, but that's still something that is off in the future. And for now, I think Radix is, if not the only one of the only ones to have it.
I think like Falco X has one, I guess, technically.
Is that out yet? I didn't think that was out yet. You're right. Their new The new Flight 1 flight controller does have it.
Gotcha.
I can never tell whether they've actually released something or whether it's just in testing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this also seems cool. It's 8 motor outputs as well, which is always great. VTX pit switch, dual camera inputs, flash memory on the board. So I don't see anything like major missing. You get I2C, buzzer, all those kind of good things. So
that seems like a really full-featured flight controller. It costs about $65, which is on the higher end for a flight controller, but it is an H7 chip, which you know, that justifies that a little bit. So cool, good job, BrainFPV. Next is not a flight controller, but an ESC that I think is pretty cool. Remember the Flywoo Hexplorer hexacopter, 4-inch hexacopter?
yeah.
Yeah, and they had the first 6-in-1 ESC.
I don't know. I guess there's no other way you could really build a hexacopter for a bind and fly situation other than using one of these. So
yeah, I mean, traditionally a hexacopter would have individual ESCs, but for a micro, you don't have individual ESCs on micro-sized quads. You could build it with 2 4-in-1s and just not use 2 of the outputs, I guess. But this is, I think this is the first time anyone's made. Well, I should never say that because someone probably did it 5 years ago, and you know they're going to jump in the comments. This is the first time there's been a commercially produced 4-inch hexacopter that I'm aware of.
do you think this is a like there's a use case for this at only $70 for people to buy this for 4 motors and then swap it out if they blow a FET?
Yeah, I've heard some people suggesting that this is useful for quadcopters too. It's not that much heavier than a 4-in-1, and a lot of times with these little 20mm sized boards, is this 20 or is this 16? It's 16mm. With these little micro-sized ESCs, they're more likely to pop. Well, this way, if you pop one, you got a spare motor output. So
since we're looking at flight controllers and stacks, why don't we check out the Diatone Mamba F405 Mini? I believe it's the Mark II. Right now, that stack is only $53, $52.99, with a VTX in the stack.
Wow.
I think that is pretty impressive.
I like, I do see that it's only up to 5S. I guess a lot of micros are not, I mean, there's people putting 20mm in 5-inch quads, don't get me wrong, but you're a little less likely to be using 6S, maybe on a 20mm. I don't know, maybe I'm just making excuses for it. I like that they've got this little brass bar covering the UFL. That's something that I think TBS was the first I know of to do that. So credit where's credit's due, but at the same time, it's just a freaking brass bar. It's not rocket science, but nice to see that.
That seems like the move for those connectors, as opposed to trying to, you know, that or like we talked about the locking thing, I think a while back.
Yeah. The VTX goes up to 400 milliwatts. So that's not, I mean, it would be nice if it was higher, but I love that they're putting these, they've started doing this with all their stuff. Do you see how they've got these LEDs here for the power rails? This one's for 5 volt and one's for 3.3 volt.
Okay. Interesting. So these are indicators if you lose those rails?
Yeah. They've started doing this for their flight controllers too. For every VBAT, 5 volts, 3.3 volt, 9 volt, whatever, they'll have a separate indicator LED for that rail. And if you like your VTX won't turn on, you can real quick check that LED. It's a very small thing they've done, but it does make troubleshooting a lot easier. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
By the way, I should say, for each of these products, we're just picking one store, like Race Day Quads, GetFPV, Amazon, Banggood, whatever, and we're showing the product listing. There's a bunch of links to a bunch of different stores down in the video description. I'm not trying to show favors to any particular store, but in the past, when I've tried to put like every single store on screen at once, it just gets really cluttered. So there you go.
So I want to check out another product that seems to be getting pretty hyped lately, is the Redux Air, Redux 32 F3. It's a 50 amp 20 by 20 ESC that a lot of the multi-GP racers and DRL pilots have been using. And, you know, this company, Redux Air, is claiming 100% positive feedback rate on an ESC for racers, which I think is extremely impressive. And, you know, the racers using these are Propsicle and Fat Kid. You know, Fat Kid got first in 2020 multi-GP and Propsicle got sixth. So, you know, these guys are definitely racing pretty hard.
Yeah, holy crap, dude. Like, as far as performance goes, I think it's a little hard for most people to distinguish one ESC from the other. Maybe top racers could tell a difference, but The number one thing I think distinguishes ESCs is durability. Is are they gonna blow up on you? And it looks like they carry a full replacement warranty. Basically, are they saying that if you blow it up, they will just replace it?
As far as I know, that is the understanding. Yeah, any damaged prototype or pre-production of these boards right now are eligible for full warranty. So as soon as they're back in stock or they're available for pre-order, they'll have a full warranty on them. I don't know if that'll carry to the end product or not, but anybody who's like in this phase of use right now, which seems to be like basically full production, except they just can't roll out that yet. Yeah, it seems to be super quality. I mean, they include there's a 28-volt TVS diode on the battery pad automatically, so you're not even having to include it, which I think is part of the reason that, it's succeeding so well.
Interesting. Let's talk about let's talk about TVS diodes next. Actually, that'll be a great segue to our next product. But go ahead.
I believe they're also running a fast MCU, so they're running faster than normal ESCs are, and this one is one of the BL-Heli32 ESCs that supports 48 kilohertz to 96 kilohertz, so they're claiming really good performance on 96 kilohertz on this ESC. Wow.
So it seems like that 96K is going to make the motors a little bit smoother and maybe make it a good freestyle ESC, even though it's being tailored, obviously, and tested by racers. Too bad it's not available in a 30mm form factor for guys like me, huh? Okay. Blunty, I'm glad you mentioned a TVS diode when we were talking about that last ESC, because the next product on the list is the RushFPV Rush Blade power filter board. And this includes capacitors, which everybody knows capacitors make your ESC less likely to pop and clean up your video. But TVS diodes are commonly overlooked and are another way of protecting your ESC.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people don't realize is that capacitors have some time delay, and I think that's based on impedance and some other factors. I'm definitely not an electrical engineer, but TVS diodes actually clamp the voltage directly super quickly and then dump it as heat, which I believe is way better for getting these super quick, super fast voltage spikes we get from things like back EMF.
Yeah, capacitors are good at dealing with voltage spikes and voltage dips, right? But like you said, there's some delay in how quickly they can respond, and there's a limit to how big of a spike they can deal with. TVS diodes, you can kind of think of them as just slicing off the top of the spike, and so they can really clamp down on gigantic voltage spikes instantaneously. Basically, the people I've talked to say that all ESCs should pretty much already come with TVS diodes on them, and some of them do, but a lot of them don't. And so this board basically is like the best insurance you can get to keep your ESC from popping. The other cool thing about it, Blunty, and this is not so easy to demonstrate just from this one picture, it's actually designed to be soldered right up underneath your XT60 power pads. So you don't even have to think about where to mount it. It's just kind of solder on the bottom here and just be ready to go. Yeah, so this is $7, which is it's like you're adding maybe 10, 20% to the cost of the ESC, depending on, but it's good insurance. I don't know. Not everybody's going to want it, but especially if you're running 6S, it's probably a good idea.
If you can save an ESC by using this thing, I think it's totally worth the price. That's what I would say.
Yeah. All right.
So let's move on to cameras and check out what's new in the world of cameras and digital FPV cameras. In fact, we've got the Caddx Nebula Pro has come out. I think Caddx has finally released a Nebula we can be happy with.
Yeah, I was famously disappointed with the Nebula Nano V1. And the Nebula, then Caddx said, please, we're going to make it better. Let us release the Nano V2. And I was still disappointed. The Nebula Micro was okay, but now we have the Pro. Have you seen footage through this yet?
I have, and it seems almost like the regular DJI camera. That's what I would say.
Wow.
It's basically like the same camera, I would say.
Wow.
But it's almost the same size too. It's basically a lighter version and a normal form factor. 19 by 19, I believe, instead of DJI's weird 20 something by 20 something.
I mean, that alone, having it be a standard size, could be an argument in its favor. I've actually flown this. I didn't know I was flying it at the time. It turns out the Flywoo Hexplorer that they sent me has this in it. So Caddx came to me and they said, "Hey, would you like to review this camera?" And I was like, I may already have flown it. You don't need to send me one. I don't remember being disappointed, but I would love to see a real side-by-side. So I should probably get on that.
Yeah, my understanding is the sensor is just slightly smaller to basically fit in the different form factor of the camera. But otherwise, it's an identical, you know, as close as they could get to the original DJI camera.
And just to check, does it support all the features like high quality versus low latency? Adjustable,
yes,
adjustable. It says low latency here. Is it switchable or is it locked?
Yes, it is switchable to high quality as well.
Okay. So it's like a full-featured DJI camera, just with slightly smaller form factor. And it's a little less expensive, too.
Yeah, it's, I think, like $10 less in the package. And I think it's, I'm not sure how many grams. I think 6 grams less. It's quite a bit difference in weight.
Oh, that is a big difference. That's a big difference. That's not nothing. I mean, I say that. That's not nothing, assuming that we don't have to give up a bunch in, because I mean, the Nebula Nano was a lot lighter too, but I didn't think the trade-off was worth it. 4.3 versus 16.9?
I'm actually not sure what the sensor is.
It must be 4.3, otherwise I would have complained about it in the Hexplorer review. So, all right. All right. All right, good. So I guess keep an eye on the channel for a head-to-head between the Caddx Nebula Pro and the full, you know, Caddx Vista DJI camera. Definitely get subscribed and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Well, we got another digital camera here. This is not a DJI camera. This is for the people who have gone with the SharkByte system. And I don't know about you, but I was reasonably impressed with the range of the SharkByte system, but I thought the image could have been better.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from there. I am just overall not super impressed with the system, but you know, the camera for me especially was, you know, it's definitely a premium analog. I think analog plus is something I've said a few times and other people have said as well. I think that's like the best way I've always described it.
I just don't understand why Runcam released the Nano. This is also a Nano camera. Why is no one releasing a micro camera for SharkByte? The Nano cameras have smaller sensors, right?
Yeah. I would think so, but this is a 1/3 inch sensor, so it's fairly large.
Oh,
I think the DJI Nebula Pro sensor is also 1/3.
Wow, yeah, I see that. Okay, my hope, I got to order this. My hope, Blunty, is going to be that this is the camera that makes, I was going to say SharkByte look as good as DJI, but I just don't think it's going to happen. But hopefully it gets a little closer to that knock your socks off experience.
I hope so too. From the preliminary footage that I've seen, it's not going to, you know, blow your socks off or anything, but I definitely am interested to see, you know, your hands-on like opinion about it, because it certainly seems to be that they worked on this and, you know, they put out this camera. Also, it's, you know, of note that it is analog and digital, so it can do either one.
Oh, that's a good point.
16.9 switchable and that sort of thing. And then it also does camera control from your board or the OSD through Fat Shark SharkByte if you do that as well.
Nice. All right. Cool. Well, SharkByte people, keep an eye out. Well, let's shift gears from FPV cameras to action cams. Well, I say action cams. Usually when you talk about an action cam like a GoPro, what makes it an action cam is that you can kind of beat the crap out of it and it doesn't get damaged. That is definitely not true for this camera. This is the Insta360 SMO 4K. I don't know what a SMO is, but it is a naked version of an Insta360 is it like the 4K mod? I'm not sure. It's a naked action camera that you can get without having to rip a GoPro apart and risk damaging it. $239.
Yeah, this seems really cool. You know, GoPro so far hasn't like released their own version of a naked camera, so it's neat to see that BetaFPV is working with Insta360 on making a naked camera that's like meant for this. You know, I believe it comes with a harness to hook it up to your quad properly, like through a balance connector and stuff.
I don't think GoPro is the least bit interested in serving the FPV market, and who can blame them? Because all we do is we just get free cameras under warranty and take money out of their pocket. But the truth is, I think we're a very small market. People said, why did GoPro cancel the Session 5? It was a great camera for FPV. And it's like they're interested in selling cameras to much snowboarders and dirt bikers and everybody else. They don't care about us. So it's nice that BetaFPV and Insta360 are out there developing a product specifically for us. But none of that matters if it doesn't actually create good video. So have you seen some of the reviews of this, Blunty? What do you think of the video it makes?
I have. I think it looks awesome from the things that I've seen come out of it. I mean, it's a 4K wide angle shot. And then it also comes with UV filter and ND16 filter, like snap onto it and stuff. I think that's a really cool product. I'm really impressed with it. And at 30 grams. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree that the image out of it is usable. I would call it usable for sure. I don't think anybody is going to claim that it's on par with a GoPro. The stabilization, the flow state stabilization is pretty good. Maybe on par with Hypersmooth, maybe not quite. But considering what you're going to get out of this, you know, $240, decent image quality, good stabilization, 30 grams, and you don't have to pull out a soldering iron and rip a GoPro apart. I definitely think it's going to be a solution for some people.
And so if you need a quad to put this SMO 4K on, BetaFPV is now releasing the Beta 95X V3 Cinewhoop frame, meant specifically for the SMO 4K. It looks like they've even got the little power lead coming out when you buy it, so you can plug it right in.
Yeah, this is, I'm intrigued by this because I flew the 95X V2 with a naked GoPro, and I mean, it got the job done, but I think I've talked to a couple other people about it, and we all seem to agree that it was basically underpowered and too heavy for the motors and just didn't fly that great. But this is a whole different frame, isn't it, than the V2?
Yeah, it seems like it. That's for sure. It seems like they're trying to take the feedback and continue to make, you know, iterations on their frame designs and stuff. Hopefully, this will be better about Jello. I know on my V1, I've definitely had some issues with Jello, and I've heard there were some on V2s as well. But it seems like there's quite a bit of, you know, stabilization and vibration dampening on this frame. Yeah,
single piece plastic frame, molded plastic all the way around, designed for Caddx Vista from the start. Is there also an analog version? Doesn't look like there's an analog version for the V3. So yeah, $239. I assume that does not include the camera, so it would be about $500 with the camera.
Oh, there is an analog version on RDQ.
Oh yeah, how much is the analog version?
It looks like 180 for the plug and play, no RX, or 205 for the Crossfire.
So I guess the big question is going to be, does it fly better than the V2? And of course, the only way to answer that is to get it and fly it, which I don't think either of us have done. But kudos to BetaFPV for their work helping Insta360 develop this product for the FPV market and for continuing to improve rather than just like some companies would have just kept selling the V2, even though maybe it wasn't the best. And they've put a lot of work into creating this mold for the V3, so hopefully it is a step in a good direction. The next product we're going to talk about is an ND filter. Do you use ND filters, Blunty?
I actually don't. I only have a GoPro Session, like the original Session. That's my extent of fancy video footage other than DJI. So,
gotcha. Even with the Session, though, you're kind of making a point here for the product we're going to talk about, which is these camera butter ND filters. So in case anybody out there doesn't know, an ND filter is just basically it's sunglasses for your camera. It's just a tinted piece of glass. And what it does is it forces the camera to have a slower shutter speed, which increases motion blur. And it turns out that when you're shooting video, sometimes it looks better to have a little blur. Whereas if you're a photographer, you want everything to be perfectly sharp, right? Well, even that's not always true. So ND filters are how pros get some of that buttery smooth FPV footage. It's one of the tricks of the pros. But Blunty, one of the problems is that it's not always easy to put an ND filter on your camera. So here's a picture of Hero Session with the camera butter filter on it. This is actually just the lens protector, so it's not tinted. But that lets you see this little sticky rubber grommet that holds it on, and you don't need any special mount or anything like that. Just sticks on the front and does its job.
I had to go look it up, but yeah, I think that'll fit. I believe they're a similar form factor, but that's definitely a neat option for people who don't have any way to like otherwise get a filter under their Session. I was looking at taking off the front cover on mine to try to replace the lens.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to do that. But so then you can imagine how surprised I was when Camera Butter announced this. They started a series of twist-on filters as well, which twist-on filters are good too if you have a Hero 7 or a Hero 9 with a removable lens cover. Although I was kind of surprised to see Camera Butter doing this since their whole deal is that they have stick-on filters. But, okay, $50 for a set of 3 filters. That's a pretty decent price compared to like the expensive Polar Pros or whatever. And they just go right on the front of your freaking camera.
So let's move on to something I do know quite a bit about, which is whoops. And
Tiny whoops, you do.
And currently, Happymodel has just released the Moblite 6 and Moblite 7, which is a light version of their 65mm and 75mm whoop quads, the Mob 6 and Mob 7. And now they're using a new board that's in these, the Diamond F4 board.
Oh my god!
So that seems like that'll be cool for a lot of people to be able to use that board. And it actually seems like they are paying attention, I guess is the best way to put it. You know, these quads are quite a bit lighter. Right now, the Moblite 6 is 18.5 grams without a battery versus like 20 to 22 grams you'd expect out of a 65mm quad. And the 75mm is at 19.5 grams without a battery.
This has Mr. Shutterbugs all over it. These are Mr. Shutterbug's design, aren't they?
Yeah, basically, yeah, Mr. Shutterbug made, I think it was like 16 point something grams, but yeah, super light, 75mm wheelbase quad, and I think that was most likely the inspiration with the timing and everything for these guys. Yeah, I just think these are really impressive for somebody to put out as a bind and fly. I'm interested in the durability and to see how they last for people.
Yeah.
But these seem really cool.
Well, that's always the big thing with weight. You know, as you reduce weight, you reduce durability. That's just a fact. But especially on these little 1S quads, you get so much performance for every gram you take off. Because, you know, you take 1 gram off a 20-gram quad and it's 1/20th the weight. You take 1 gram off a 500-gram quad and it's 1/500th the weight. So it's not as big a difference, right? You get it.
Yeah.
This is really slick. I also am really intrigued at this idea that they're not even using the whole 24mm toothpick style, whoop style FC. They're like, nah, we're going to just knock a quarter of that off. And I mean, hey, that's maybe another half a gram or a gram of weight saved. So why not?
Yeah, and not only did they knock it off, but they also took the plugs off the board. And they've actually made decent sized solder pads on the bottom of that board to solder to. So like I said, I think they really are actually paying attention, which is pretty neat.
Have you seen any flight footage from it? How's the camera?
It seems okay. Camera on these guys. So it is the Runcam Nano 3. I'm not sure if it's a later version of it, but if it is the normal Nano 3, I do have a decent amount of experience with that camera, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay.
That's what I use on my toothpick.
That's always a weak spot in these these nano-sized quads, whoop-sized quads. The camera is oftentimes just garbage. So hopefully that's not true. Let's see what's next on the list. You added this, Blunty. This is the BetaFPV LiteRadio 2 SE. So like the LiteRadio from BetaFPV is a pretty solid radio for $40. Very basic beginner radio, not very feature filled, but you know, gets the job done and has okay gimbals. I was kind of impressed with it. What's the difference with the LiteRadio 2 SE compared to the original LiteRadios?
So they've actually moved away from OpenTX, which I guess would be debatable whether that's good or not. You know, before you basically had to hook the controller up to your computer, use OpenTX companion, and then go through and manually do things like calibration or updating the single profile that was on the radio. And now basically they've kind of gone away with that. So it's just one setup. The switches are bound to, I believe, aux1 through aux4, like you would expect on a D8 controller, and then basically, you can calibrate on the controller through a process they've made instead of having to plug it into a computer. So if your sticks do go out of calibration or the gimbals have any issues, you can do a calibration process like live on the controller, and then at least you don't have to plug it in to do that. That seems to be their big selling point for no OpenTX. I think for most people who are using this radio, this is a benefit, but for any of us who know like how to use OpenTX, maybe something of a loss.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought when I heard the LiteRadio was a $40 radio that could plug into OpenTX. I was like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. But then I was like, how many people are going to, because you can't actually, it doesn't have a screen. So you can't actually see the effects of your changes in real time. So then I was like, oh, well, how many people are really going to do that? And then somebody actually cracked one open and like hacked a screen onto it. I was like, okay, that's cool, but how many people are going to do that? And I guess the thinking is that if nobody's going to really be plugging this into the computer to use it for OpenTX anyway, let's just make it be a standalone radio. I guess I see the argument.
Yep. They've also added a built-in 1,000 milliamp hour battery as opposed to using your own LiPo. And they're claiming up to 8 hours on it as opposed to the previous LiPo size. Didn't make much sense for that. And then also, it looks like they're doing 100 milliwatts of RF power instead of 80. So there is a little boost to internal RF power. And they're adding Futaba. So this can do Futaba as well.
Yeah, I noticed that. I also like that is it all the protocols in one radio? Because the original LiteRadio, you could either have the FreeSky version or the Bayang version. And people are accidentally buying the Bayang version and then trying to bind it to FreeSky receivers and not understanding why it doesn't work. But has this one got all the protocols in one?
Yes, for my understanding, this has all the protocols together. So you can't buy the wrong one, basically. Okay,
that's good. I approve. Yeah. The only other thing I would say is a whole bunch of people are buying the LiteRadio, and then like the solder joint on the gimbals is falling apart, and they're having to crack it open and solder it back up, which is, I mean, if you know how to do that, that's easy, but it's kind of annoying, especially if you're a beginner. So hopefully BetaFPV has figured out whatever's going on back at their factory, and that problem won't happen with this radio. Well, here's another radio that I think should be on everybody's radar, Blunty. Do you remember a little while back, we talked about the Jumper T-Lite, which was a new gamepad style radio from Jumper. And I said, well, I'm sure RadioMaster is probably making something similar just because they always do. Yeah, for sure. It seems like that has become the case, except maybe a little bit of an improved version with the RadioMaster T8 Pro. Yeah, this is the RadioMaster version of the T-Lite, if you could call it that. There's actually a lot of differences between them. Yeah, I think most notably is the addition of the screen. Yes. Let me put the T-Lite up on screen side by side so people can see it. The Jumper T-Lite and the RadioMaster T8 Pro side by side. So look, the T-Lite does have a screen. Oh, it does. Okay. Yeah, I didn't even realize it did. Yeah, it's got a lot of buttons here. The RadioMaster seems to have gone for the more minimalist approach with fewer buttons. See if we can get another look at the side. Yeah, we got the screen here is removable. It's kind of slick. I guess you might have times when you might feel like, no, I would never do that. I take that. I don't know. I was trying to sell it, but I can't. Looks like we got four switches here. I would assume that means that you can't use the JR bay. Is there a JR bay on this? There's the picture. So here we can see, yeah, this is completely covering the back of the radio. If there was a module bay, they wouldn't be able to use it. I'm going to assume there's not a module bay. Huh. I wonder if, so is that a deal breaker? No module bay, no crossfire, no tracer. Is that a deal breaker? No ghost? Definitely changes opinions, that's for sure, I would think. Because then you're $70 into a radio you can't really expand, you know? Jumper T-Lite doesn't have a module bay. I mean, just to be fair. Maybe that's just not something they're hitting in this price point, in this category. Yeah, I just always think about like the X-Lite, the other, or the Tango 2, I guess, has the addition of like, you have to mod it in. But, yeah, you know, the other game controller style at least has the ability. So that's interesting that these don't. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for in your radio. Yeah, those guys are coming in at like twice the price. Right. Tango 2 Pro, $160, I believe, more than twice the price. Jumper X-Lite. What's the X-Lite going for? I think the X-Lite Pro is actually fairly expensive. $200 for the X-Lite Pro. Ooh, okay. So those guys they do have the module bay, but they're coming in at a way higher price point. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, no time will tell, but another one out there for the right person. So here's another cool little product from Vifly. We've looked at the ShortSaver before, but this is the ShortSaver 2. They've actually made some upgrades that I think most people who use the first one would have asked for. They've added an on-off switch, so you can actually have it plugged in and then do things like bind or, you know, hold buttons and stuff with just that switch, nice and easy. And then they've also changed the trip time
The trip time used to be a pad on the back that you soldered to change the speed at which it trips, and now that's just a button you click.
Nice. That on-off is like, that's such an obvious feature that I wished was in the first one, because having to hold down a button on your receiver and plug in an XT60 is just a pain. So just being able to push a button and turn it on to bind. I mean, if FreeSky would make their binding more easy to do, then we wouldn't need it, but it's really great. Even if you're just trying to power cycle something, it's nice to just be able to push a button as opposed to plug and unplug. Love it.
And I believe this has a faster trip time as well on the short side, so it's 3 milliseconds now. So I don't think there's much that could that could catch before that does. Yeah.
The only thing I would want from the V1 would be another option for the current. They have a 1 amp and a 2 amp threshold. I would like the ability to have as much as maybe a 3 amp threshold, because sometimes you'll get a situation where your motor beeping, or a VTX, a particularly powerful VTX, will trip it. Now, to be fair, the 3 amp time is going to be more likely to smoke something, but that's a risk that I'd like to be able to take if I choose to. But this is really good.
Yeah, maybe that's something that you could add a bridge for, so the user has to take care of it or something.
Yeah,
that would be a cool idea.
All right, well, there's only one more thing on this list today, and then we are going to get to the giveaway. We're going to talk about what we're giving away. The last thing is another soldering iron, another sort of semi-clone of the TS100. But this one really brings something to the table. First of all, it's $25. So they've just gotten, they used to, what was the most you've ever seen a TS100 sell for? I'm like trying to think back.
Yeah, I don't know offhand, but definitely not $25. That's what I would say.
I think I remember them going for like 60 bucks, let's say. And,
yeah, I would say 60 or 65 sounds about right.
Yeah, 25 bucks. So, of course, who knows if the quality is going to be any good. This could be a case where Chinese manufacturing cut a bunch of corners and it is a cheap shadow of the original. It could be a case where finally all the fat has been cut out and it turns out it was only ever a $25 iron in the first place, and now just finally we're paying a fair price for it. I don't know. Comes with Raylan firmware already installed on it, which is a upgraded firmware that adds some features to the board, and takes the standard tips. Freaking $25. I mean, what more do you want? I guess I should get one and test it out, but for 25 bucks, you could kind of just take a chance.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty easy win for me. Nice little clone. Cool little option.
All right. All right. Well, that brings us to the giveaway. And I have to say, I already know the product I want to give away this month. Do you want to take a guess what it is? I mean, if you're wrong, we'll just cut this out so you don't look like...
The FPV Flight Dynamics book?
You got it. Yes, of course. Of course we're going to give away this book. I cannot think of anything number one, that I would more like to give to people. And I can't think of anything that I think would make people happier than to get a copy of this book. So let's give away, it's only like a $50. Normally I try to give away a little bit of a more expensive item. This is only a $50 item. So let's give away 8 of them. Give away 8 of them. To enter the giveaway, go down in the video description. There is a link to a Google form where you will put in your contact information, and that is how you enter. So don't leave comments trying to enter. That's not how you enter. There's also the full terms and conditions, including the cutoff date for entries, which will be, usually it's 3 or 4 days after this video comes out, whenever that happens to be. So the cutoff date and the other terms and conditions are in the video description, as well as how to enter to win a copy of this cool book. Thank you very much, Blunty. It's another month gone by.
Yeah, another month of products rounded up.
Yeah.
Feel good about that. So.
And we only recorded for like an hour and a half this time, maybe even closer to an hour. I think we got started a little late.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I look forward to seeing you next month, but also, next week for the news and all the other times. Have a good day, man.
Cool. Thanks so much. You too. Take it easy, guys.
What are you still doing here? The video's over. Do you watch all the videos all the way to the end? Wow. You are a super fan. Thank you. That actually helps the channel a lot when you watch the videos all the way to the end. YouTube loves that. You know what else YouTube loves? When you subscribe. Or when you join my Patreon for as little as $2 a month, or more if you feel like I've earned... Actually, YouTube doesn't like you to join my Patreon. They don't get a cut of that.